What's the highest one?
I'm not, I can't tell you.
1 minute
I
over.
just said 140.
141?
Okay,
150.
Oh.
gotcha.
Oh.
I hope not.
Like your hair?
Thank you.
Looks very nice. I thought I saw you walking
Rusty
in
and
the,
I,
in the
we
building this morning.
decided to get a haircut.
2 pounds removed today.
I was like, that looks kind of like Desiree, but the hair's not right. Oh no.
Okay, welcome everyone. Today is Tuesday, October 26th, and it's about 6 p.m. This is the Isle of Palm City Council meeting. I'd like to call it to order and acknowledge both the press and the public were duly notified of this meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Please feel free to join me or not as I say a prayer to be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance and then roll call. Dear wise and loving Father, I thank you on behalf of all who have gathered here tonight. I thank you for everything you have blessed us with, life itself, our health, and for this island paradise we call home. And Lord, this being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, look over and strengthen all women who have gone through or who are going through breast cancer along with their families. I ask you to strengthen and to heal as you see fit. Lord, heal every woman and their family who is sick and encourage them only as you can. And please, Lord, I ask you to look over our residents, our employees, our families, and our visitors. Please look over and protect our brave women and men who serve our country in the military and in our public safety department, who look over and protect us 24/7, 365. We thank you for our liberty, our freedom of speech, and I ask for your guidance tonight and wisdom in our governing our island to work together in making the right decisions to affect our residents for not only now, but for generations to come. It's in your name, I pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk Nicole Dean.
Councilmember Pounds?
Please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Pounds?
Here.
Councilmember Smith? Here. Councilmember Bell?
Here.
Councilmember Ken?
Here.
Councilmember Ward?
Here.
Councilmember Moy?
Here.
Councilmember Streetman?
Here.
Councilmember Popson?
Here.
Mayor Carroll?
Here.
You have a quorum?
Thank you very much. Starting with citizens' comments, tonight we have a presentation for our audit by Harris, formerly known as McKay, Kitty and Associates. We have Chris Kerr with us tonight, and he's going to lead us off, and then we will have citizens' comments.
Slides up here, ready to go. All right, thank you. So we'll go on to the next slide. So my name is Chris Kerr. I am the audit manager on the job. This is my 4th year auditing the city of Isle Palms. I believe we've been doing it for over 5 years now. I'm CPA, been in the business for about 10 years now. Move on to the next slide. So the Isle Palm financial statements are about 100 pages long. We will not go over every page because we will be here all night. Just going to go real high level, and then if council has any questions, feel free to let me know. We're going to go over our report, a few of the management and discussion and analysis items. That's kind of our high level, the boilerplate good items that you want to see when we're going over the financial statements. We'll kind of talk about what the basic financial statement structure is, and then go into a little bit of the internal controls and compliance that we looked at during the audit. Next slide. Next one. All right. So you have in front of you the draft financial statements. We are very close to finalizing them. If you look at page 1 and 2 of the financial statements, that has the audit report. The year of audit that we're looking at right now is June 30th, 2021. The main thing that I want to go over in the audit report is kind of just the purpose of the audit. It says that the purpose of the financial statement audit is to provide an opinion on the material accuracy of amounts and disclosures in the financial statements after obtaining evidence, performing detailed testing, and performing inquiries of management, which we did all this. Basically, it says we're looking at this within a material lens. So obviously, we're not looking at everything, that's $1 here or there. We had come up with a material threshold and determine based on the size and scope of our, the city, what would be material, and then determine, okay, is there any adjustments that need to happen in that material lens? Good news is, as part of our audit, we found no material audit adjustments. And then in our opinion, we present that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. So this is a clean opinion. This is the best opinion that we can provide as an auditor. And it's also called an unmodified. We are at, as I mentioned, in draft financial statement form. There was one thing that we were working on when we were working with Debbie, and that was related to some capital asset additions. Particularly, it was the bulkhead recoding. So basically with GASB says that if it extends the useful life of an asset, you should capitalize it. And so at first we were under the assumption that it had extended it. But then as we talked more with Debbie, it was determined that, the bulkhead has a useful life of 40 years total. So it's about 28 years more to go. And that coating that they're doing, that they did, is really going to just make sure that you hit that mark. So we determined that it should not be capitalized and that it's really ongoing maintenance. So that's the last kind of thing that we're going to finalize, and then we'll be able to issue the financial statements probably this week. Moving on to the next page. So this goes over the management discussion analysis. And so this kind of has some summarized numbers for the financial statements that are shown kind of in the detailed financial statements. So assets exceeded liabilities by about $37 million. That would be your net position, of which 31.1 million were and 6.6 were related to city's governmental and business type activities. Business type activities would be the Marina. Total revenues were 9.6 million, which exceeded total expenses by 15.3 million, resulting in an increase from prior fiscal year of $4.2 million in net position. The city's combined ending governmental funds balances were 24.8 million. And this is an increase of 4.5 million over the prior fiscal year fund balances. 3.3 million or 3.4 of the total fund balance is available for spending at the city's discretion. And it's also worth noting that there is an additional amount of about, I forget, it was 2.2 million related to the reserves. If there's a hurricane or something of that nature, that is reserved. And one thing that we looked at too, I think we've presented in the past, is kind of where that reserve is compared to other cities and localities. And so there's about 15% of budgeted fund expenses that are in that reserve at the end of the year. And there's also, when you account for the unassigned 3.3 million, you're at about 35% that you have as kind of a buffer if anything were to happen, major hurricane, COVID, something like that were to happen. So it's a very strong position. I think the governmental finance office, they typically say that between 10 to 15% is a good balance in reserve to have. So you guys the city is right on track there. So on the next slide. So capital additions during the year were 8.7 million. The main items included in this were vehicles, drainage, the renovation of the public safety building, equipment, and then the Marina dock replacement costs. Additions were offset by depreciation expense of 1.9 million and $135 million or 135,000 for governmental and business type activities, respectively. And then total debt increased by approximately $6.4 million compared to the prior fiscal year. And this was due to proceeds from 2 new general obligation bonds This was used for drainage project and then the Marina dock replacement. The city's bond rating right now is at an AA1, and Moody's describes this as a high quality and subject to low credit risk. So that's outstanding. Next slide. So in this slide, we have kind of a detailed description of kind of the different fund basis versus government-wide basis. If you want to look at this kind of high level, it helps describe the different financial statements. Basically, if you're looking at accrual basis financial statements, that's your government-wide. That's going to have your debt, your pension costs, pretty much everything. And then fund basis is almost more cash basis. You're not going to have property and equipment on the books. You're not going to have the pension liabilities and those kind of things. So those are the two things that you'll see if you were to look at the detailed financial statements. We're going to go over kind of a high level at the government-wide level. So if you look at the next slide, the statement of net position summary analysis. So this shows kind of, it's a nice, very high level. It shows both the prior year and the current year activity. So you can see total assets were about 62.4 million right here. And then that is up about $12 million from the prior year. And then total liabilities were down, or were also up about $8 million from the prior year. And then you can see that the unrestricted net position, which is right down here, has gone up about $4 million from prior year. And this is kind of all reflective of the next statement, which we'll go over. If you go to the next slide, which is the changes in the statement of net position. And so it's also good to look at this through the lens of what happened in the past year, which obviously COVID was a major impact, and to kind of look back and realize, okay, how did the city do with all of that kind of in play? And so it's nice to see that, you know, the city had an increase of revenues of about $3 million. Expenses were up about $1.4 million. And then the total change in net position, so basically positive, if it were a business, it'd be net income, was 4.2 million this past year, whereas in the prior year it was about 2.7 million, so about $1.6 million increase. So even with all the impacts of COVID and everything going on, the city was running fiscally responsible and managing their funds very well. The last slide that I'll really touch on is the next one, auditor's communications. So at the end of the audit, when we finalize everything, we will present a letter that is kind of for high level, what we experienced in the audit. Did we have any disagreements? Were there any audit adjustments? And I'll go over kind of high level where it will look. There were no difficulties encountered during the audit. You know, Debbie, her team, Desiree, they're all really great to work with. We've had, you know, a good rapport with them. They're very organized. They get us stuff very quickly. We usually don't have too many questions and they provide stuff very easily. So it's a very good working relationship, but higher than that, you know, they have a good internal control structure. There's only a few people in the finance team, but they found a way to make sure that there's good checks and balances on everything. So I think that that's really important. You know, us as auditors, we come in, we're like, okay, well, how are you doing this? You know, Debbie, you do it a lot. Okay, well, you have Desiree reviewing or ways and means and different things like that. So we make sure that there's definitely good checks and balances in place. And if there weren't, we would provide a letter of internal control deficiencies. And the good news is there were no internal control deficiencies this year. Last two things. So there were no material journal entries, as I mentioned earlier. So that's great. And then no internal control findings. So really that's kind of the broad high level picture of the financial statement audit. You know, it went smoothly. I think this is the fastest we've ever done it, but also is very, you know, organized as well. Had a clean opinion, no findings. So a very good report from that standpoint. Sure.
We have count on our council. We have a banker on our council. So if you have any questions, I saw Councilman Ward.
Yeah, just a couple of points. You said with the testing of the internal controls that you felt like there was adequate separations of duties. as far as that goes?
Yes, sir.
No problem.
Yes.
How many years now has the city kept its bond rating? It's been several years, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, since I've been on the
Yeah.
audit, I feel like it's at least been the last 4 years.
At least for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't mind, taking a little time and just explain to everyone here on the draft unaudited required supplementary information, page 7, government-wide financial analysis. Just briefly, the net pension liability, that's a big number, and it's like right at half of the total liabilities. If you would explain the realities of that number and what it represents.
Sure. So the city is part of the South Carolina pension, and the pension currently is underfunded essentially. So they have, liabilities expected, they use these actuaries that determine when people are gonna live till, and they determine, okay, here's the amount of pension that we'll have to pay out. And here's the assets that we need to make sure that happens. And right now, they do not have adequate funding. And so anybody that's kind of in there has to have part of that liability, basically. And so at the end of the year, this was kind of the city's obligation at the end of the year for pension liabilities. So it's about $11 million. Now that will be kind of chipped down as people retire and as the contributions are made throughout the year.
That's a relative, I think it's been around like 3 years. And the point, the way I understand it, it's not like a real number where somebody's lining up at the door and say, I want you to pay this bill.
No,
And so I think it's important that people understand what that is.
no, it's not even within the next 5 years,
Right.
really, think about retirement and how long this is gonna last. It could be a number spread out over the next 10 to 30 years, really.
Right, and it is material because it's half the
Absolutely.
liability.
Yeah, and it's
So we
like,
didn't have to
it
carry
jumps
that.
off the page at you. If you really look
Yeah.
at it.
The net position would be even higher. That's all I had. Thank you.
Councilman Streetman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things to note. The entire audit is posted online, so any residents could get that information, correct?
This one hasn't been finalized yet, as he
Yeah.
stated, so once it's finalized and
Right.
rounded, it will be posted, but all of our previous financial statements, audited financial statements are on the website.
But this one is not posted until it's finalized.
Correct.
Okay, and then I'm assuming we also will have this very good summary of the audit posted
No.
there as well.
We received that, but right before the meeting, so it's not posted, but it will be posted in conjunction with the meeting packet. The
Right.
meeting packet does include the draft, but again, it'll look somewhat different based on the input provided today to
Exactly.
the final.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I just want to say congratulations and great work to Debbie and all the staff on another good audit.
Great job. Thank you. Okay, moving on to citizens' comments. Let me just remind everybody, we have a 3-minute time limit. We have a clock down here. And when it hits yellow, that's 2.5 minutes. So, and I'd also like to remind our elected officials and members of the public who may be running for office that please refrain from campaign speeches on city property. We are here for city business only, in keeping with our state ethics rules. I think our first person up to speak is Josh Huth.
Thank you for that introduction. And one of the things that, as we move forward, a constructive compliment or criticism I would make is we allow our citizens to speak for more than 3 minutes and we don't cut them off or inhibit their speech in any way. And I understand that that's the mayor's role. So I'm looking forward to a new mayor taking over, and hopefully we can have some citizen comments that aren't treated with a yellow light. But what I'm here to talk about is the Lovelo bike ride that you all are about to vote on. And really the alcohol at the end of it, which you all are supposed to vote on. And I was at the event that the Firefighters Association put on. They raised tens of thousands of dollars. So I'm going to keep this short and simple. When you all are voting on this, I'm going to encourage you to thank our fire department for doing that. I cannot tell you how long it's been since I felt a sense of community. and I felt it there. So I'm going to leave my time there, and I hope that you all will thank our fire department for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Seeing none, hearing none, moving on. Consent agenda, approval of previous meetings minutes of September 28th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none? Nicole?
Councilmember Pounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
all in favor?
Thank you very much. Reports and standing committees, Ways and Means is up first.
Thank you. Mayor, we'll do a quick financial review. So Amy, if you have that slide, that would be great. And then we'll run through the minutes. We don't have any items for voting on tonight from Ways and Means, which is very unusual. So our financial page, these are results through September 30. So a quarter of the way through our fiscal year. Seems like we were just putting together the budget. We're already a quarter of the way through. So revenues, you can see just under 4 million year to date so far. Expenditures just under or just over 3.3 million. So about where we expected things to be year over year. About the biggest change is on rental license. And we've got an item on the agenda tonight. You're aware of the Standardization Act that's going on. That's just changing some of the timing of the receipt of those rental license, and that'll even out as we go through the fiscal year, but that one's under from last year. In September, we closed on a lease, municipal lease for the fire engine and the equipment. Total was about $875,000, and that was for 10 years at 1.6%, so very favorable rate. Also on October 1st, we received our first piece of the American Rescue Plan Act money. That was about 1.1 million that's been placed in the Capital Projects Fund as grant revenue. In October, our bank, we've been with BB&T for quite some time. They completed their merger, so you'll start seeing everything as truest on all of our records going forward. At the end of September, we have about $28 million in cash reserves. Of that, about 4.7 is unspent bond proceeds. About 9.7 is restricted for tourism. So we have about 14 million currently unrestricted for city use. So any questions on finances? So Mayor, real quick on the minutes. Ways and Means met at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, October 19th. All members were present except Councilmember Ward. We had Debbie reviewed in much more detail our financial statement, and that whole package is in the Ways and Means meeting from last month. Desiree completed a capital projects review, and that's also in tonight's package that you can see in some detail there, but just give you some quick highlights. The Marina restaurant renovation, and I see we've got one member of our lease family here with us tonight. There's a slide detail on all the work that's happening there, but the exterior framing and sheathing inspections are complete. Electrical and plumbing rough-in inspection should have been finished last week, I'm thinking. Drywall has been delivered. The entire ADA entry ramp has been demolished and repaired and replaced, and HVAC ductwork has begun. Salmons has begun work on the restaurant dock improvements this past week. There's continuation to look at the ADA access to the third floor, and Rusty, I think you'll have a further update in the real property committee on that. The Marina dock rehabilitation, again, another slide detailing all of that work is in your package. Dock area C in front of the restaurant has been turned over for public use. Just a few punch list items there. All the piles have been driven and docks installed in dock area B. That's a charter dock going towards the fuel hut. Been turned over to the electrical and water utility contractors, which should finish up in about 2 to 3 weeks. Few pieces left to be done there. The delivery of the fuel platform is expected on November 15th. Demolition of the current fuel dock and HUD is scheduled for November 29th. Petroleum Marine will remove the dispensers and secure the fuel system on November 15th. Installation of the fuel platform is scheduled for December 1st through the 15th. And then after that, the fuel hut will be built on site. So a lot of work and a lot happening down there. Phase 3 drainage, finally have all the permits for 30th and 36 outfalls. We had our bids. This has been a couple of weeks ago. We only had one bid, so we did not open that bid. But we didn't have all the permits in hand at the time, so we tweak the bid requirements just a little bit, just to allow a little more flexibility based on some feedback. So our goal now is to have the bids back and ready for a recommendation at the November Ways and Means meeting. So the unopened bid was returned to the bidder with so they could revise and resubmit. Our phase 3 drainage projects, the last one was on 41st, where that's been blocked for a couple of weeks. Hopefully that will be, Desiree, unless you have a different update, hopefully that's this week that it'll be finished. No update on the underground conversion from overhead lines. The bulk of our meeting was spent discussing the wage and compensation report from Evergreen, who's been our external consultant that's been working on that. The package is in last week's Ways and Means meetings for any residents that would like to look at that. But again, our game plan is to have a recommendation on implementation, which option to implement, how to pay for it at our November Ways and Means meeting. And we discussed a number of options about how to fund in future years. In fiscal 22, we're fine from a budget standpoint, but we had a lot of conversation about how to fund that in future years. So we will have that recommendation for you in November. Our next Ways and Means meeting is Wednesday, November 17th at 5 p.m. Mayor,
Do we have any questions for Ways and Means?
Desiree, any updates or anything you want to add?
Yes, the work at 41st Avenue and Wildwood is expected to be completed this week. They laid all the pipe underground by Friday of last week. They just had to do some grading and compacting that area. And as of yesterday, the repaving of the road was scheduled for tomorrow. So weather permitting, that moves forward and we can get that road opened. You're welcome.
That's it, Mayor.
Very good.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Oh, sorry.
Yes, sir.
so before we asphalt, has there been a compaction test done on this, on the base after they did the drainage?
I believe that was
across?
scheduled between yesterday and today after the grading of the pipe area.
Insight probably is doing the testing.
No, I don't believe it's inside. Gulfstream is our contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Do
I think it's Terracon.
Terracon.
You can tell who our contractor is in the council. Thank you. Good.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, Aaron, nothing else? Public safety.
Public safety meeting was held Thursday, October 7th. All members were present. We had Interim Chief Briscoe state that in September, calls were down. However, they were 150 higher than the prior year. We had 2 fires, a motor vehicle accident involving a pedestrian. We had Fire Marshal Stafford's participation in the wellness fair and the department's participation in a car seat safety check. And he has also, since coming on board, had the opportunity to meet with all fire department staff and spend considerable time with them. And also, he's been meeting with local fire chiefs to discuss ways in which the 1710 standard can be brought to the IOP Fire Department without any additional cost to the taxpayers. Captain Swain reported for the police department. We had 876 calls for service in September, 74 incident reports, 5 motor vehicle accidents, 296 traffic stops, 45 arrests, 7 DUIs, and 12 drug-related incidents. He also reported that we issued our first ticket for a violation of the no wake zone. So that's progress. And Master Patrol Officer Jason Santilli was recognized as the employee of the quarter for his active DUI enforcement and other recent arrests. In old business, we had an update and discussion of the study of the modifications to the IOP connector. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but I had brought up, I think all of us were a little surprised and disturbed to see Secretary Hall presenting signage to the beach access group. And I certainly, my opinion, acting outside the bounds of an apolitical governor's appointee that is supposed to be representing all communities on an equal basis. So without saying much more for that, that's a topic that has been added at the bottom of the mayor's agenda tonight. Discussion and consideration of proposed amendments to the dog ordinance to include restrictions of vicious or dangerous dogs. So we spent a considerable amount of time and years on this subject. Administrator Fregoso stated that most of our surrounding communities have definitions in place and they have fines in place and they have registration in place for what are deemed as vicious or dangerous dogs. And it's never that simple. So we looked at all the other surrounding communities ordinances. Most do not specify certain breeds, but Captain Sway did say that the adoption of an ordinance would help animal control services officers to write city ordinance tickets, and also helpful in making the distinction between animal at large and vicious dogs. Comment that I did make is it's interesting that the surrounding communities have them defined, yet they can come to the Isle of Palms with no definition and roam free on the beaches. So somewhere in there is an answer that ultimately we'll come up with the help of the chief, who's nodding his head, with the definition that works for the way that we'd like our ordinances to read. So I made a motion that we come forward with a statute for appropriate definition and fines. Councilmember Pound seconded, and the motion passed unanimously. We had a discussion of the speeding issues on the avenues in consideration of reducing the speed limit on the interior streets. Desiree Fregoso recommended that the committee consider presenting the council resolution with a request, I believe that's on the agenda tonight, to make all streets 25 miles per hour or less, with the exceptions of those that are posted otherwise. Councilmember Ward made the motion to recommend the matter to full council, and Member Pound seconded it, passed unanimously. Discussion of enforcement of golf cart regulation. Captain Swain stated that the chief's plan for golf cart education and enforcement this summer has been very effective. Administrator Fregoso added that cities taken every opportunity to hand out education. What we had requested prior, and I think has been done, is every opportunity, whether it's through the rental companies or the recreation department, that people be educated as to the law and the safety requirements. I would add here that Councilmember Ward brought up, I think, and I don't believe it's in the minutes here, that we look further into, Jimmy, I don't put words in your mouth, but being able to secure, the way children are handled, without seat belts, sitting in their parents' laps while they drive. And is there anything that can be done going forward to both educate and enforce things that are frankly, clearly a public safety danger? We had an update on coyote management efforts, and the city continues to work with legal counsel in reviewing ways that the city can work with private property owners regarding the trapping of coyotes. Captain Swain stated that the trapping season is December 1st through March 30th, and outside of that time, a trapping permit is required. I asked the city to reach out to Wild Dunes. We've had this subject now for my 4 years on council, and had a prior discussion in the beginning. There's so much wilderness, if you will, in Wild Dunes where the coyotes roam, that to be effective in any program, we probably should solicit the participation of Wild Dunes in that program. A discussion of and consideration of submitting requests to SCDNR to reinstate the no wake zone on the Intracoastal Waterway. This was also discussed with the Real Property Committee. It's been an issue with people along the waterway in Goat Island that have been asking for this for a while. I made a motion to have it a resolution from the city to make that request of DNR. Councilmember Pound seconded. The motion passed unanimously. We had a discussion on the beautification plan for Palm Boulevard, and I brought this up as Desiree and I and the mayor had discussions with Secretary Hall. The plan on putting the angled parking, which we all think has worked out as a more orderly parking plan, also came with a commitment from Secretary Hall to work with the city to not have it as ugly as it is. We had discussion back then. I don't know if Desiree, if you've had any further discussion, but there was discussion of removing the angled bumpers. But I don't think anyone, particularly the police chief, believes that removing the angled bumpers would be productive in the way that people line up and park in those angled spots. So I asked to keep this on the agenda for, it'll be future councils to continue the conversation, because while we have a more effective way of parking on Palm, it is not the most attractive thing that we look at every day. Miscellaneous business, and I just want to comment, there was an agenda item added and then subtracted regarding live music. I don't know how this got off the rails, but it was added because our current ordinances do not line up with what is being permitted at Front Beach. It was not added as anything other than an administrative item so that we can bring our codes in compliance with supporting live music and the activities at Front Beach. And it got twisted and placed on social media, and everybody got phone calls and got their hair on fire over something that frankly, we were trying to do productively to support the businesses on Front Beach. So Desiree, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but that sort of closes that. Other than that, there was a motion to adjourn. And Desiree, I think we're still working on the time for the next meeting.
Yeah, it's scheduled for November 10th, on Wednesday, November 10th. And initially, we had it scheduled for 3 o'clock, but we have court that day. And also our chief requested to consider an earlier time. So
So
I think we're trying
so
to-
we'll wait to collaboratively come up with a time
Yeah.
that works for everybody.
in the morning, hopefully.
And so ends the report.
Before we go
Yeah, sure.
further, is that an action item as for a reduction of the speed limit?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a motion?
Second.
We have a first and a second discussion.
I agree with it.
I agree with it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thumbs up.
Okay, Nicole, I think,
Mayor, can I just ask
Yes.
what, so Randy, you've worded it a little bit different than what's on the agenda, Desiree. So it's take it to 25, except Palm, or unless otherwise posted. right?
Correct.
Because there are some,
Yeah,
Areas.
and that is how it was written, but that's absolutely correct, because we have some areas, I believe, that are 15 miles per hour
Correct.
and posted as such.
20,
Correct.
yeah.
So it would be unless otherwise posted.
Posted.
And I think, Ryan, I think we talked about this last year in public safety. It'd be nice to take some sign pollution down. If we could just have signs where we come over the bridges and take all the other speed limit signs down if we can, that would be, I know that's not part of the resolution, but the
Will.
implementation plan when we get to that point.
We will recycle them.
and again, for our residents in the audience, again, this is all the interior streets on Isle of Palms. I mean, we're just trying to slow people down. So Nicole, I think we're ready for a roll call.
Just before, I'm sorry, Mayor, you're voting on instructing staff to develop a resolution to bring before city council.
Yes.
Councilmember Pounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
All right,
all in favor?
thank you very much. And I know it's not on our agenda, but you did talk about the no wake zone. I'd like to see us continue with that thought process because it worked beautifully
Yeah.
this summer. Any questions from council for, yes, sir?
I'd like to request of the chair that, for our November meeting, the child safety seat issue be placed on the agenda.
Will do.
Okay, Chief?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a comment, because you mentioned in terms of the dogs, reference to maybe restricting or singling out certain breeds, but no. Okay,
No.
good. I would caution against that.
Absolutely not.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would caution against that. Thank you.
Okay, great report. Moving on, Public Works.
Public Works Committee met at 4:30 PM Wednesday, October 6th in City Hall. We have to call to order. No citizens' comments, approved the previous meetings minutes, department reports. Director Pitts stated garbage collection for August was average, September collection was a bit high but expected. Yard debris collection for August was down from the 2020 total. He reported that Public Works was called up on yard debris collection across the island. The assistant director reported on a recent meeting with these about the 500, 600 of the forest. Is that a typo? Is that the 500 to 600? I'm not sure what that means.
I don't have them in front of me.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll just read it. For the forest trail basin drainage that needs to be completed, said they were down to staffing members due to COVID. The annual 3-year testing for the underground storage tanks, public safety, public works, and the marina have been completed. Public Works is also installing and replacing street signs out of the way. Old business, we update on phase 3 drainage, and Ways and Means already covered that, so we'll move on. Update and discussion of potential solutions to drainage ditch erosion issues. The director said the framework and documentation that Director Kerr, that is, for this erosion auction is ready. Update on discussion of golf cart path on Ocean Park Plaza. The administrator said there's no update on this, and the staff continues to look into it. We're gonna keep that on the agenda.
So the number is 560 feet.
560 feet. Thank you very much. So we're gonna keep the golf cart path on the agenda.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the curb cut.
Yes, sir.
All right. Discussion of litter-related ordinances, enforcement and messaging. Councilmember Smith said she'd like to see more litter-related messaging at the beach, access pass. And the administrator said 2 more signs been ordered. There was $20,000 in fiscal year 22 budget for these purposes. The signs cost approximately $3,000 each to purchase and install. Then we had a discussion of adding bins to share left behind beach toys. Councilmember Smith said she believes a good place for a bin with more left behind, excuse me. Only left-handed. Sorry. Toys is the 1100 block of Ocean Boulevard by the showers and suggested the restroom attendant could check on it. The administrator said she would prefer the upkeep of this bin be the responsibility of volunteers as opposed to part-time restroom attendant. Next meeting of the Public Works Committee will be held Wednesday, November 3rd at 4:30. And I prefer, and I made a statement that we would have no meeting in December unless it is an emergency. Get back to the old schedule of taking December off. Thank you. That's ends my report.
So ends the report. Do we have any questions?
I have a clarification.
please.
In the discussion on signage, we were talking about the marquee signs that are not just for litter messaging, but can be used for a variety of things, including litter messaging. And the fact that we only have a fraction of our beach accesses have that signage, which I think has worked well. So, but it's not just for litter. It can be used for a variety of things. And the magic of those signs is that you can adjust them along the way by taking out panels and replacing them with other messaging that you might want in the moment. So, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Hearing none, moving on to recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We met on October 4th at 8 a.m. with our full committee, as well as our city administrator and our recreation director, Paige, who delivered her report. And I can tell you, if you haven't noticed, that it was an extremely busy month of events for the recreation staff. They had the Isle of Palms Connector Run, which was fantastic, on October 2nd, and raised over $85,000 for charity, for the support of children's charities, and involved at least 800 participants, and was a great partnership with the Exchange Club and many others and many volunteers. We also had the, Ghostly Tide Tales, as well as National Night Out at the beginning of the month with the police department, which was a great partnership, as well as we have the upcoming Halloween parade and carnival on October 30th. As you may remember, we had our very first Halloween parade with floats last year during COVID, and it was such a wonderful innovation that I believe that's going to continue well into the future, but it is definitely happening this year. The whole event will be from 4 to 7. It will be on October 30th, which is not on Halloween, which is a little different than our usual, but because Halloween falls on a Sunday, the event will be on Saturday, October 30th. And if neighborhoods want to adjust their trick or treating, they have that ability, but we're not offering any guidance around trick or treating. Let's see, otherwise, exciting news that online registration software will be going live in the first part of November, I believe. So that will be a great thing for users as well as staff. It should provide some efficiency. Let's see, COVID-related protocols continue at the rec department. And we discussed, we continue to review our pilot program on surfing instruction, which was in its first year this year. And so we have a ordinance that we will be discussing later to continue that program. I'll say that we received a great deal of positive feedback that I think the full council was often copied on in emails that we received from very happy parents and grandparents about a lot of it was around 2-hour camps that were offered during the summer. We had, I think, 3 different outfitters that had come, gone through the permitting and showed us that they met our qualifications. And so we can discuss further what our recommendations are later in the meeting when we talk about that ordinance. And otherwise, the committee just started to, what we'd like to do is have kind of a changeover note for the next recreation committee that will be following up in 2022. So here ends my report.
Great report. Do we have any questions? I'd like to add that, I think this month was incredible. The events were incredible. And just to make sure everybody knows, the golf cart decoration, people need to have registered golf carts. So you can go to iop.net and find out all those rules and regulations. So again, great report. Thank you.
I actually remember that I forgot the fall market and a movie, which was also fantastic. So lots going on in the calendar this month.
Lots of fun. All right, moving on. Personnel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Personnel Committee met at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, October the 13th. All council members and staff were present. We've started with old business with an update on the wage and compensation analysis, which we've covered with Ways and Means already. So we'll get back to that in November. The big point to make there is the goal of having this finalized before 2022 calendar year is absolutely expected. So we don't expect any delays there. We moved on to discussion of upcoming vacancies on boards and commissions in consideration of reappointments for new applications. We took action on one set of appointments for the Board of Zoning Appeals and punted, or not, I just didn't say punt. We, as it relates to the Planning Commission, we need to interview the candidates that have applied. So I didn't see that on the agenda for taking action. Desiree, would you like for us to do all of them all at once?
Yeah, that would be the recommendation.
You got it. So we're just going to shelf that motion until next month, Mr. Mayor. We did get an update on the hiring process for the firing chief. And at that point, Administrator Fregoso had selected a recruiting firm, and we're in the midst of reviewing that contract, which I assume has been signed and executed at this point.
Yeah, the contract has been executed and the city will begin the job assessment and organizational assessment process later this week and next week, which will include focus groups and meetings with members of the department and stakeholders as the first step.
Great. And even though this council did pass an ordinance granting the city staff the ownership of the hiring process, we felt like it was important to keep that on the agenda so that council could get updates as the process goes on. Moving on to new business, we did have a discussion about the establishing the Spirit of the Island Award that Councilmember Ward suggested in our last council meeting. And we gave instruction to the staff to create language both for the Spirit of the Island Award as well as for the Signal 30 so that we could be more consistent with the state awards in terms of having more objective, clear-cut ways for evaluating and awarding those prestigious achievements. Thank you for that suggestion. Yes, sir. And then finally, we wrapped with consideration of a new job description for a zoning administrator. You may recall that last month, Administrator Fregoso presented her proposal to create a deputy administrator position that was joint with the director of the building department. Doing so would require an additional staff member in the building department to handle a lot of the essentially in the weeds work that Douglas Carr takes on now. And so she proposed a job description that we made a motion to approve, and that, does that require action? Again, not on the agenda, but we did take motion to in our council committee memory.
In the past, the personnel committee approved a job description. We're not adding a position, so it doesn't require a council vote. The job description, we're still working on it. We hope to finalize it this week. Ultimately, I think the personnel committee's action should suffice in approving that.
Okay, and if you're interested in seeing the current draft of that, it's in the personnel committee packet posted online. So ends my report. We're meeting again Tuesday, November 9th. Now so ends my report.
That's a great report. Do we have any questions? You gonna meet in December?
No, I was going to follow your suit.
I like the style. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Real property.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Real Property Committee met at 1:30 PM Monday, October the 4th. We had council members Popson and Streetman were present. Councilmember Moy was not in attendance because he was busy welcoming a new member of the family to the fold. So congratulations. We forgave him for not being in attendance on that meeting. We didn't have any citizens' comments for that particular meeting. We did have some Marina tenant comments that I'll get into in just a moment, but I want to, and that's in regards to the restaurant. But let me move on to other parts of new business first, which is the update on the Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project. I won't spend any time on that because our Ways and Means Chairman covered that just earlier, and we have all that information is in the deck. But everything's going along pretty nicely there, and we're looking pretty good for the Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project. So unless there's any questions, we'll just move on. I would like to update on the Marina Restaurant renovation by Marker 116 LLC. In our meeting that we had for Real Property, we did have John Bushnell and Rob Hamill, and Rod Hamill is the general contractor for Nucor Construction, which is doing the work down there. And they both spoke to us at the meeting last month. And we asked specifically about, first off, we wanted to compliment them about all the things that are being done in the renovation. And that's really coming along. It's going to be a really great looking building and very well done in regards to the construction and the work that's going on down there. We did get around to the ongoing subject about the elevator. And Rob Hamill explained the change regarding the elevator that we had when the restaurant group had originally had that in the plans and submitted to us. And then as they went in, they found out that there were two load-bearing walls right in the middle of the restaurant, and then there were pilings under there. Anyway, it complicated things. And they found that with the architect that they had, that putting an elevator shaft in would be impossible to do because it would make the ADA, make the men's bathroom not ADA compliant any longer. So anyway, they ended up, dropping those plans at that point. We did continue to talk about what other options there would be. And Mr. Bushnell reported that the architect was going to be back that week to look at options for an elevator. And I think at this point, that's where they're still in the process of doing that. I don't know exactly where we are in that process, but I do know that there's still options being looked at. And I would guess that, I would say that, that we really need to step up on this, in the November meeting anyway, and look at what our options would be for any sort of elevator in that area there. I did ask, last month that all the council members that could please get down there and do a tour of the building and look to see what the issue was around the elevator. And I think just about everybody was able to do that. And, so I just wanted to update that. Now, since then, I think Desiree and Douglas Carr have had conversations. So I'll defer to Desiree if there's anything to add. I know I've probably missed something, Desiree.
Well, I think it would be appropriate to have Douglas report on that meeting where some of the options were discussed. And I guess
Okay.
what the status of those options are and what are the other alternatives that the group is looking at.
Okay,
Yes, we met, John Bushnell and I met with a representative from a company called Mobility Works. We pretty thoroughly looked around the building at various options to provide some kind of better access to the additional floors above the first floor. Things discussed included basically a chair lift. That would be a lift that would go up a stairwell that would take somebody from the first floor up to the second floor. We looked at multiple different stairwells. There are 3 different stairwells within the building. The judgment was made that the back stairwell would be the most appropriate. We have just heard back really today that the company that provides those lifts would be unavailable to provide an appropriate commercial grade lift, which we think creates a problem with the LLR that licenses those things in commercial applications. So it is looking as though the chairlift is potentially undoable. The other option that we discussed, and it wasn't really the preferred option by the tenants, was basically a lift that would go on the exterior of the building, that would be in a shaft. It would be kind of back on the back side of the building on those decks and go between those decks. There were very close tolerances in terms of how that would work. The lifts max out at 14 feet in height. It's like 14 feet 1 inch between the floors. So it's a very close, it's very close to not fitting. And really, because it was not the preferred option at this point, I don't think it's been fully kind of thought through in terms of whether or not that would work. So we're planning to meet again and circle back on that option. But I think the staff feels like, we're seeing the building progress. It's moving along. I think we know that they're planning on being finished in December. We're here in October. November's right around the corner. You just don't have a lot of time between now and their desired opening date to get this information and come to a consensus as to how you all want to handle the situation. So I think we felt like it was incumbent on us to just make you aware that while we're still talking about it, I mean, the construction's progressing and we don't really have a solution at this point.
Douglas, we have a real property meeting next Monday at 1:30. Do you or Desiree, do you feel that we'll have another update at that point for real property that we can work with?
I don't, based on our meeting today, I don't think that we're going to get any more information that we have today by next Monday. Hopefully, ideally, that would be the case.
Yeah, in our meeting today, there was kind of, and I think Desiree and I are feeling the time kind of pinch us a bit. There was a concerted effort expressed to get something concrete before your next meeting, November 23rd, is that?
No,
The next
17th.
city council.
Well, we may have even had that. So that gives me the impression that your next real property committee would probably be too quick. For
Okay,
them to
but-
have,
But
really
have
vetted through other options.
Right, but certainly have information about the November 23rd city council meeting.
So it would be the 17th.
November
17th, I'm
City
sorry.
council,
Yeah,
yeah.
17th. Okay. One other thing I wanted to mention too, and Douglas, you can stay there if you want to. You may have other things to update, but we want to do all we can do to support the Marker 116 group to get the restaurant open as quickly as possible too. It's not, we don't want to delay the open this restaurant that would go all the way to the third floor. And it is, I mean, the restaurant is ADA compliant on that second level. It's ADA compliant really on the third level too. It's just that we don't have access to the third level. So that's something that we hope we can find a solution for. But is there anything else, Douglas, you needed to add, you or Desiree?
I do want to add just a quick point. Regardless of what option is considered, I know that we have been discussing the chair lift installed in one of the stairwells. I mean, it seems to us, based on our conversation, that no matter what option is considered, it is unlikely that that will be in place by opening date. So we're looking at something that could be retrofitted after the restaurant is completed and has started operation. So I just want to keep expectations reasonable, that no matter what option, whether it's a shaft or an elevator lift attached to the outside of the building, or a chair lift, all that would need to be ordered, would need to be designed, and will likely not be in place by opening date.
Understood. I mean, any questions or
Mr. Chair,
comments?
Well, we got Douglas up front. Douglas, isn't there a pretty significant difference between a residential and a commercial grade elevator?
Yes, I think there is. Yeah,
I mean, you
It's-
see all these houses being built with elevators, but their commercial grade is a completely.
that's
different
correct.
animal.
Yeah, and that, that really was kind of the initial knee-jerk reaction, is if you don't really have to have it to comply with ADA, maybe you could get by with a non-commercial, because it really was the size of the commercial elevator that pushed it into that bathroom. So that was kind of our initial take, was maybe we could do something less than a commercial grade elevator. The problem there comes in with the LLR only allowing certain, I mean, if it's going to be in a commercial application, it's going to have to comply with LLR standards.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just quickly as well, it's a triple net lease, so the maintenance and warranty and all of that falls on the families group. And you can probably do many things that would not be warranty supported.
Mhm.
But I think, with respect to the families group, they're looking at the fact that we've now finally got this as a triple net lease with the maintenance going forward on a city asset with the private enterprise. We need to be cognizant of that when we make requests of that.
Councilmember Smith?
Thank you. I think it's important to note, and I think everybody here is aware, because we've been down and looked at how things are progressing. But the remodel, one really positive thing for the disabled and access is we now have on the first, well, I guess on the bottom floor, I'm not sure what number you put to that, there is a deck, outdoor seating that overlooks the water. So that's new. So while you might not have the height of overlooking the water from the very top, there is going to be fantastic seating, from everything I can tell, where you can enjoy food and drink in an outdoor setting, and that will be brand new in terms of that venue. So, and that will be easily accessible for the disabled.
Anyone else? Okay, well, we'll just move on to, thank you, Douglas. The next item of business that we have to discuss was the noise control agreement with Marker 116 as well. And we are going to need to have this completed by this council this year. So we still have that out in the hands of Marker 116, and they are working with their legal counsel on that. I did want to remind everybody that, we do have a noise control agreement that's in place right now since February 23rd, 2016, I think it is. City's Code of Ordinances exempts city-owned property subject to a commercial lease and a noise control agreement or permit from the prohibition on amplifiers and loudspeakers being operated outdoor public places owned or under control of the city. And so we do allow that under our code here, basically, that city-owned restaurant is going to be allowed to have amplified music at that venue. What we are looking at is there's a couple of things that we added to the agreement that we're waiting for them to agree on, and that's, if there is noise complaints, that they have 30 minutes basically to adjust the volume, and then also have to come up with a plan to handle that going forward too within 30 days, so there's not going to be a continuing issue. So Desiree, if I'm missing anything, I think we're just waiting for next month to finally get that agreement in hand, hopefully.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
We're waiting on them to provide feedback on those adjustments.
Okay, great. All right, next update on the proposed public dock and green space at the Isle of Palms Marina. I won't spend a lot of time on this, other than say that there still is some legalities remaining there. So we hope to have some good news there. And we've got some good tentative plans that have already been worked on in advance that hopefully once we get that area there, we can start really getting serious about what next moves are. Then we had an update on the ADA beach access improvements. And we talked about at that point that, we had the landscape vendor lift the Moby mat at 42nd Avenue, regrade it, stabilize it. And I think they've finished extending that at this point. So Douglas and Donnie are nodding, so that means yes. So we're good there. And I think we're going to contract to do that every month also. So that should be very helpful there. Survey at 34A beach access has been completed. And Desiree had approved funds to go forward with design and engineering of the improvements. We've got final details of the beach wheelchair program being put into place now that we have the funding approved. And we didn't have any update. We probably still don't have any update from OCRM, do we, on the changes to their code?
No, I reached out to them. I believe it was last week, mid last week, and I haven't heard back from them.
Okay. I did have a conversation 2 days ago, I think it was, with Representative Bustos. He reached out to me and told me that he had contacted Scott Slagle. Is that his name?
Matt's label.
Yeah, Matt Slagle. I'm sorry. Yeah. Matt Slagle in regards to this matter. And he's willing to help us as much as he can from a representative standpoint. So he's engaged. And at this point, I haven't heard back from Representative Bustos, but hopefully he'll be able to get back with me and let me know how that conversation went. So in the meanwhile, we're still waiting on ACRM. All right, no new business last month. The discussion regarding the request to reinstate the no wake zone on the ICW, I want to give props to Kevin Popson on our committee. He's the one that brought that to our committee. And so we all decided to pass that along to public safety. So we just passed the ball along to what the property committee would be, or proper committee would be. And thanks to Kevin for bringing that forward to us. I think that's a good idea.
Maybe Randy will do a better job on his.
And see, miscellaneous business. The next meeting, real property, will be next Monday, November 1st at 1:30 p.m. At this point, we will not have a December meeting either, unless there's something that comes up that's pressing, and hopefully we don't have that. So we made a motion to adjourn, and we did so at 2:15. So ends my report, Mr. Mayor.
Great report. Do we have any questions? Hearing none, moving along. Reports from city officers, boards, and commissions. The Board of Zoning Appeals, our minutes are attached. For everybody out there, if you go to IOP.net, you can find everything there. Planning Commission, the minutes are attached. Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee, next meeting is October 27th, 2021. And our first ever Environmental Advisory Committee, and the minutes are attached. But Desiree, you want to just kind of give us a brief how that went?
Would you like your city council liaison?
There we go.
No, I didn't want to put you on the spot. No, we had a great meeting, and I'm sure Councilmember Smith can fill in any gaps that I leave off. We had a great meeting with the group. Everybody but one person attended. There's one student who was in California and was not able to attend, but everybody else was present. We started with just a quick introduction. Nobody really knew each other, so everybody had an opportunity to share, how long have they been on the island, and really the background that they bring and the expertise that they bring to the group. I gave him a quick review of FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, just making sure that all city-related business in the board would have to comply with the same rules that you all are aware of and are very knowledgeable of. We also basically discussed the goals and the purpose of the Environmental Advisory Committee, and they had a pretty thorough discussion about some of the items that they want to focus on. And in order to create a more specific and structured plan for this committee and their work for the next few years. They had an assignment to come back to the next meeting, which is in November, with top 3 issues that they want the committee to evaluate. And they're going to be discussing that at their next meeting and picking, again, a handful of items and issues that they're going to focus on. That was really it. I mean, Councilmember Smith did a great job at just thinking and reminding them of some of the issues that you've already discussed and thought through, and have talked about maybe the Environmental Advisory Committee taking on. And she led a really nice discussion about those issues, and hoping that the committee will help this community continue to be at the forefront of environmental issues and environmental policy. So I think everybody's very excited. Again, looking forward to our next meeting, and I think they're certainly very eager. They will be electing their next chair and vice chair at their next meeting as well. So they have some homework to do.
Susan, anything you want to add?
I think what's really wonderful, which I shared with them, the level of expertise that walks in the door when they get together is really valuable for us. And these are people that come from different aspects of environmental issues that, there is some overlap here and there, but they come to the table. They don't have to research necessarily because they already know what they're talking about when they walk in the door. So that's really wonderful. It seems like it's going to be a great group. And, the liaison from city council is really not there to shape the conversation, but to, be the go-between. So if there are anything that you all want me to pass along to them at the next meeting, feel free to reach out or share here. That they will be shaping while we tossed, I tried to give them a list of possibilities. They will be shaping where they go from here.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
May I
sir.
say something? I listened to that meeting, and I thought it was very well done, very well organized, and seemed to be a lot of engagement. I know that one did not get on video. It was basically audio on that particular one. So I'm hoping that our next meetings will we have that on
Yes.
video as well?
Yes, sir.
Assuming we had a problem that day. So,
Mhm.
okay, but that, it was well done, and it seems like a very excited group ready to get some work done.
Very good. Okay, let's move on. Reports from special or joint committees, none. Petitions received, referred, or disposed of, none. Bills already in possession of council, none. Introduction of new bills, resolution proclamations. Ordinance 2021-13, an ordinance to allow year-round surfing instruction on the beach with certain conditions.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any? Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I would like to open that up for some brief discussion.
That's what we're here for, discussion.
Okay, although it's not traditional with our first reading, I did want to make a couple of notes that what the ordinance currently says, and what we discussed in our committee was increasing the number of students to 12 while keeping pretty much everything else consistent, except for making sure that we're allowing for year-round surfing. We have a gap because we set a end time in our pilot program of October. We created a gap where technically surfing is not allowed in the moment until we pass this ordinance now. So we'd like to continue, while we're recommending that we still continue on a yearly basis of review, we want to make sure that we still allow for year-round surfing instruction. However, after talking to a surfing instructor and hearing some of the feedback, I would like to recommend that we not go up to 12 students, but go to 8.
This is just first reading.
First reading.
Okay,
This will come back.
Amendments on second.
okay. So that's,
Yes.
anyways, I think there's more discussion for us to have in our next meeting of the Recreation Committee. And so
Okay.
we may come back with some adjustments for
Thank
you.
you very much. Nicole?
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. Ordinance 2021-14, an ordinance to provide for the standardization of the business license process.
Motion to approve title only.
Second.
But Douglas is going to explain a couple of things for you. I'm sorry.
So could,
Very, very quickly. Just as matter of background, this ordinance is coming to you as a result of the Business License Standardization Act. You'll remember that last year you did a quick ordinance that got our dates or due dates aligned for short-term rentals. So we're currently in the middle of, well, we finished up collecting basically a 10-month rental license. This is the second part of that process. This will fix the ordinance going forward to be compliant with the Business License Standardization Act. What is in your packet is basically the Municipal Association Model Ordinance that we have modified slightly to take care of the unique situations on the Isle of Palms, which are basically the short-term rental license and city-sponsored events are a little bit unique for the city. Operationally, this will change how short-term rental licenses are, really, it'll just change the date that short-term rental licenses are collected. All future business licenses will be collected at the end of April, which is different for that group of licenses. We've sent them a letter. We've sent each license holder a letter, and we'll send a second letter when their time comes up again for renewal, because it would catch them a little bit off guard. The other thing to just let you know is that we are still working with the Municipal Association on the rebalancing of rates. The act requires that all licenses, all businesses be classified similarly between cities. So they are doing an exercise where they are kind of shuffling different uses of licenses into the same categories to align throughout the state. And they are going to ensure that our rates do not generate a windfall for the city. Basically, the act can't be used to generate additional revenue. So by the time of second reading, there will be new rates put in those columns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nicole?
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. Ordinance 2021-15, an ordinance to temporarily suspend enforcement of Title III, Chapter 4, environmentally acceptable packaging and products for businesses affected by the global supply chain issues due to COVID-19 pandemic. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Nicole?
well, before you take a vote, Mayor, the ordinance as drafted, obviously it's just by title only first reading, but we did not include how long the suspension would be in place. So that's something you can discuss now or just think through before second reading.
We'll reach out to the businesses and see if they say, reach out to our supply chain.
Yes.
So you're passing first reading,
Right, we can make amendments to that second if we need to.
correct? Just making sure that y'all are aware that there's no time period included.
We all know about the ships backed up out there and containers and everything. Yes. Nicole?
Councilmember Popson.
Ooh, I get to go first?
Yes.
Aye.
Switch them up.
Look at that.
Keep you guys away. Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan. Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. Resolution authorizing the consumption of beer and wine only.
Second.
For Lavella. We have a motion, second.
Oh.
Mayor, I just, for the record, make sure everybody's aware. So this event was approved earlier this year. The city's sponsoring it. They have requested a road closure to start Thursday morning just for the southbound lane, the landside lane of Ocean Boulevard between J.C. Long and 14th Avenue. We have prepared notices to all the businesses out Front Beach and the hotels and the property management companies, just to make sure everybody's aware. But that road closure would begin Thursday morning at 7 a.m. and would end on Sunday at 11 a.m. So there's going to be foot traffic allowed along the area, and the northbound lane will be opened. But there's going to be the parking spaces along that southbound lane will not be available. Those are going to be used for tents and the setup of the event. We have met a couple times already with the Lovelo team. We're meeting again on Tuesday, police, fire, and administration, just to make sure that the whole event is, goes out well and everything's organized. And it's been a great team to work with Lovelo and everybody here.
Just for those that may not be familiar, I think we started this with Lovelo in 2018.
2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
This will be the third year.
Okay, this is the third year. And for public record, this council has been very supportive of this event and the fire department. And my guess is the future councils will as well. This is the first year that we are really the host city.
Correct.
So it's a much bigger deal this year than it has been in the past. In the past, this has been some of us contributing money and some riding on bicycles. This year, it's going to be a pretty big deal for the city. So I think, we welcome the event.
And
Mr.
just-
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
may I say something?
Of course you may.
Being a part of the Lovelo meetings, being on their executive committee, they have last meeting a few days ago, there were almost 800 riders, which would make it one of the largest rides of its type in the country, basically. So it is really closing in on some really good participation, and it's going to be a great event.
Before we vote, I'd just like to challenge everybody here that I am riding with the fire department. And I challenge any council member, police officer who's not working, public works, recreation, join in. It's a great fun event.
Is that a motorized bicycle?
Nicole?
Oh, I have,
Oh,
Ms.
yes,
Ru-
ma'am.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
thank you. In terms of communication, I'm sure you guys have a plan for making sure the community is aware, but is there also a plan to try to drive some community engagement around the event if it's only like where you can cheer and that kind of, I'm not sure what the timing is or how that works exactly, but is there a way for the community to come out and show their support, even if they're not maybe,
There are different rides, 10 miles, 22 miles, 50, so there's gonna be all day long, different times of people coming in.
There's also plenty of volunteer opportunities too. You can get a Lovelo t-shirt. I mean, all that's available. I think we have that posted
Yes, and
on the
they're also,
Facebook page with the city, but I mean, we're looking for volunteers. I mean, anyone who would like to be at a water station or give directions or whatever. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity for any of that participation.
it would be great to really step up the presence on
Yeah.
social media to make sure that the community knows how they can get involved.
and there's also opportunities for folks that can't for some reason do the ride or any of the rides. They're going to have stationary bikes at the on-site and cycling classes that I think the public can participate in, and music. So it's going to be a great event for the community to get together and support.
Yeah, most participants are in the 10-miler, which will be island to island, basically. That's for the large majority, but then some hardy souls like the mayor here and some others will
They
go greater
have
distances.
me so they look good, because I'm always bringing up the rear.
That's the one I'm
Okay.
doing, the 10-mile one. That's
I'm with you. Me too.
So let's go ahead and go forward, please.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. Resolution authorizing the discharge of weapons using blank ammunition and amplified noise for the blessing of the veterans and the first responders on Saturday, November 6th at the Lutheran Church on the Alpine. They came to us for the last 2 years. And again, the guns are a as a gun salute for the fallen heroes.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Nicole?
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. Miscellaneous, discussion and consideration of the city commissioning a separate study to evaluate the modifications of the Isle Palms connection. Yes, sir.
I'm happy to, unless you'd like to.
No, you
lead
go
it.
ahead. I'll be right there with you.
Yeah. So just a reminder, when the connector got restriped very quickly and almost surprisingly and amazingly for a government entity, there was a lot of public consternation. There still is a lot of public consternation. I would say the surprise is we probably didn't see in the data over the summer, and I still believe this summer was spread out better than most summers will be because people were coming to the beach much earlier. But we got a 4-foot emergency lane. And the agreement that was reached, or the discussion with Secretary Hall and Senator Campson, was that they would fund a study. This council said that's interesting, but we don't have full faith and belief that that study will be an unbiased study. So we opted to, I believe it's $15,000, Desiree. So we said we would participate in that study. And the only thing that's been done so far is collecting of data, which is, somewhat automatic. But there's been no real definition, no scope defined, no purpose defined. And now we sit, and I'm very passionate about this. Now we sit watching signs and placards being distributed to the directors of the Beach Access Group, signage being presented to Senator Larry Grooms, and we're sitting here going, wow. So now we're going to be reliant on a study that has clear political bias directed at this island. And I use the words, it's an assault on our home rule on this island. And I don't believe that we should be participating in a, if you will, co-funded study with the Department of Transportation at this point. I've had enough conversation with residents. I don't find anyone that has a belief that we're going to have an unbiased study as a consequence of this, particularly when we don't have any definition behind it to begin with. So I asked the mayor to put this on for consideration, that, it'll be a future council item, but that we don't co-sponsor a study with the Department of Transportation.
Just make that a form of motion.
It's a lot. Yeah. I will make a motion that we cancel our plan to co-participate and move
SCDOT.
for the SCDOT study.
Is that, can we do that? It's not the way it's listed on our agenda.
Yes.
Well,
There's-
no, it's, the
So-
way it's on the agenda is to commission a separate study, not to bow out of the other one.
Okay.
So
But-
how would you like to word that exactly?
I will word that we commission a separate study.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Yes, sir, Mr. Moy.
I think one of the, well, first of all, I would like to ask if Administrator Fregoso could give us an update from her perspective in terms of where do we stand with that, with regard to that study, the co-sponsored study. Ultimately, I think that what our residents want and the residents of our neighbors in Mount Pleasant and elsewhere want is light traffic and a way to bike and walk across the bridge. I think everybody really wants the same thing here. And that's what the study should really be geared around, is how do we facilitate safe flow of traffic both ways for pedestrians, bikers, and automobiles and emergency vehicles. And the problem with the restriping is that wasn't done beforehand. And that's objectively the case. That was what was presented to us. There was no study done beforehand. It was, hey, we think we should do this and let's do it. What's done has been done. And now the question is, how do we move forward and potentially consider changes? The fact of the matter is the study might reveal that what has been done is actually a perfectly solid, viable solution that solves all of the goals that we care about. So I would say commissioning the separate study is less about trust of the bias and more about speed, because it seems like things are moving rather slowly. So that's why I asked for you, City Administrator Fregoso, where do we stand? And from my perspective, that's the main impetus for us doing this ourselves is, hey, we want to get this study underway, commissioned, and make sure that, you know, for future beach seasons, that we're accomplishing the goals that this community and the surrounding communities have.
So a couple of weeks ago, the staff met with SCDOT folks to discuss what our input was for the scope of services or the scope that would be provided to RK&K, which was the firm that was selected as the front runner to take on this study. They're based out of Maryland. After that, they were supposed to get back to us with a written scope of work, and that has not yet happened. I have asked for a status update. I have not yet received a status update on when we should expect the written document that shows the scope of work that I can present to you and the Public Safety Committee for feedback. Right now, we have provided feedback about what we think or should be the, you know, at the end of the day, the definition of success when the study is completed. We've provided that feedback from our perspective, the police department included as well. And they were going to put it together in a format for us to provide, again, feedback from the policy setting body on agreement of that scope, but that has not yet happened.
Yeah, point of clarity. That's our contractor for oversight to the state study, and we don't have any scope or definition or any input back from the state, to my knowledge, at this point. Is that correct?
So there are two things. Let me just
Yeah.
clarify. The study is being paid for by SCDOT. What this council voted on, and the decision at the time was for the city to hire an independent traffic engineer that would work with us and with SCDOT to provide feedback, just, I guess, keep an eye or provide some oversight, some technical oversight over the work, and be able to speak to us intelligently from a traffic engineer's perspective about what the recommendations were, the data that was being looked at, and just have a participation from our end, just not only from at the staff level, but a traffic engineer. That's been done. We have an engagement with an engineering firm to do that. What we don't have yet is from SCDOT on our agreed scope of services, scope of work that and other engineering firm, the larger engineering firm would be looking at, would be doing the study.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes,
Go ahead, Susan.
ma'am.
I just caution from a big picture perspective that in terms of collaboration, this can be viewed very negatively. And I don't know if we come up with our own study, if it will be just dismissed from the other, you know, if it will be taken seriously. If we present our own study, just like we're being skeptical about what the other side might be pushing, that it will be the same. So I have reservations at this juncture about, because we're upset about what we perceive as a political slight of a, certainly I understand why we would be upset about it, but I don't know that this should be forcing us to make this move at this point when we have a public relations problem, and I don't think that this necessarily helps us.
Councilmember Brown.
Do we, and Desiree, maybe this is for you. Do we know what a full study cost, rough?
A full study, I think we're looking at between $50,000 to $100,000.
And I guess to Councilmember Smith's comment, you know, so SCDOT goes and has a study, we do a study. You know, they say two different things. I mean, two engineers looking at the same thing may or may not come up with the same solution, obviously. And to that whole comment, I'm afraid we may spend $100,000 of taxpayer money that may go sit on a shelf somewhere. And I am cautious with that too. I mean, it sounds like we're only a couple of weeks out from having a conversation with DOT. It's only been a couple of weeks ago that we had this conversation with DOT, and we're just waiting on a scope of work. I would personally rather see that trail happen a little bit longer. I don't know that we need to take action tonight. I would rather continue to push down that path and see the scope of work before we decide to go spend $100,000.
Do we have any other comments? I personally, from my point of view, feel that SCDOT is not listening to us at all. We've met with them numerous times. We thought we were going down their same path. They have backed up on us and kind of rubbing our noses into it. So I support this motion and would like to have a vote.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
With one last comment. I'd like to know what happened to the $50,000 that we put aside to hire a consultant to represent our interest in Columbia and if necessary, Washington. This sounds like a perfect job for him or her.
Well, so this wouldn't, I'll give you an update. So we're working on an RFP for that. We provided an update last week. I think Kevin Popson had a similar question. So that's where that is, but this is not a legislative matter. This is more between, SCDOT state agency and the city. Certainly wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't be something that would be legislated on.
Well, if we have a study and it differs from what a CDOT says, then it's a legislative matter at that time. I just want to keep pushing that we need some professional help in Columbia. I don't want this to just be swept under the rug. And this seems to me, when the study's done, if there's two different things, to me, we can go to our legislators and say,
Right.
this is what we need your help with. And that's the job for the consultant.
Okay. Councilman begin.
Thank you. I'm gonna piggyback on what Philip said. I think the idea of commissioning a separate study is a great idea. I don't know what the cost is gonna be though. And that's one thing we can, obviously, we're gonna have to vote on down the road and vote again on that cost. I don't have a problem with that. But I still like the idea of having a traffic engineer working alongside and following what's going on with this at the same time. Like Jimmy just said, we're trying to find experts who we want to put in Columbia to try to watch out for our best interest. I think if this study is going on, I still think we need somebody, an expert in place that's going to look out for our best interest and give us a heads up of what's going on. And I agree. I mean, if we want to look at pricing, see what it'd take to commission a separate study, yeah, I don't have a problem trying to figure that out. But trying to bow out of what we have going on right now, I think I said we should wait on it and see what we get from. They are dragging their feet. They said they were going to do this past spring.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, didn't we have someone engaged or weren't we looking for someone to
We've got somebody.
look over the
We
shoulder
do.
of this study?
That's what
We
she's
have
referencing.
somebody.
Whether I don't know if they would be willing or able to do a full-on
Right.
study. That would be a separate scope that the city would have to secure.
But at this point, we don't have any indication from SCDOT and or Senator Campson as to any feedback on the connector study.
No, where we left it was they were going to send us a scope of services for us to review and for you all to provide feedback on.
With
And that has not happened.
open-ended, no timeline on that, just sometime in the future.
And no progress.
Councilmember Pat.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor, just real quick. I mean, I'm where everybody is as far as progress and frustrated with the lack of progress and the show on social media. But again, I would recommend we pause for a month and see if Desiree can make some activity with DOT. To Rusty, to your question, I mean, it's only been a couple of weeks since our last interaction with the DOT. So I would rather push hard there personally first.
Susan, have you spoken twice or once?
I think just once.
I have no, I'll keep it short.
And I'll
Yes.
keep it short. I just feel like this is premature and potentially pricey.
Anyone else? Nicole?
Councilmember Pounds,
Nay.
Councilmember Smith,
Nay.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Nay.
Councilmember Streetman,
Nay.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-4.
Thank you very much. Before we go on to our next meeting, Please remember, we have in-person absentee voting at City Hall from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Friday, October 29th.
Mr. Mayor, this time I'd like to call to suspend the rules of order in order I may present something on a miscellaneous business. And what that is a brief Carter report.
You're making that motion to suspend?
Yes,
Second.
it's not on the agenda.
We need a 2/3 vote for that.
2/3 vote,
Okay.
allow me to present.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Okay, thank y'all very much. Briefly, I attended the Carter meeting last Wednesday. They talked about the IOP beach shuttle for next year. Wanted to know if there was any interest. I spoke up emphatically, said, yes, we have interest. And the mayor of Mount Pleasant was there, Mayor Haney, and he said that he was very much interested in continuing it also. He's going to do everything he could from that end. I just wanted to let y'all know that, and that we're going to take it up. It's preliminary. Just wanted to know, the director wanted to know if we wanted to pursue it. So we are. So thank you for your patience and listening to me on that. I think it's important to all of us.
Thank you very much for that update.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Just one thing, and I don't want to suspend the rules to reorder it and fit my thing on the agenda, so I'm going to piggyback on item 9E on the Veterans First Responders thing on Saturday. But we do have, I've been helping out the, excuse me, the Vets for Vets. Basically, it's core vets for vets, and it's a nonprofit group, and they're going to be having an event on the 11th where they're going to surprise a veteran with a home remodeling. But they're throughout that event on they'll be out here on the island on the 12th and throughout Charleston, but through the 12th and the 14th. So on the 12th, I believe, or the 13th, the 13th, there'll be about 50 to 80 Corvettes lined up Ocean Boulevard. So it'll be a pretty interesting thing. And it's a fundraiser, and they have a cookout at the VFW afterwards. So.
Great, thank you very much. All right, our next regular meeting is at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, November 17th. We're going to piggyback with Ways and Means. And in accordance with South Carolina Code Section 3470A2, to receive a legal update and advice in regard to tidal wave water sports eviction proceedings. There will be no decisions made during executive session, but we have to do this by code. Thank you. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
No discussion? Nicole?
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
All right,
All in favor?
thank you.
You're off.
Thank
record
you all
at
for coming.
7:42.
Feel free to stay.